Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me tonight, I have from the great Midwest, pumpkin season, as it were. I have RDV, and tonight we're covering the 1988 slasher flick Cheerleader Camp, which is not RDVA canon classic, but a pretty interesting, generic, kind of got a lot of 80s things to it movie, but it's slightly different because it's like a mix of some of the things that we've talked about in horror movies. Got a lot of boobs. We got the calorically challenged individual and some bad rapping. We got a cute Shih Tzu going on. We have Lucinda Dickey, aka the Breakin to Electric Boogaloo girl, and of course, the possessed ninja assassin from Ninja 3, one of the best ninja movies of all time, because that's the best ninja trilogy of all time. So she's in here, and I got to tell you, early on, I thought she was the killer, but it's a whodunit of cheerleaders going away to cheerleader camp and getting whacked. And honestly, RDV, I'll hand this over to you, and I'm going to put you on the spot. When you step back after watching this film and you go, it's a bad movie, but it's a good bad movie and it's entertaining, there's a part of you, if you actually analyze it, that might say to yourself, this is the fear that all women must have when they don't, let's just say, take care of the sexual appetites of their significant man. Because if not, bad things happen. And we see that in this film. What's your initial take on this film?
Initial take on this film, it's written as a horror comedy, but only a horror in the sense it has some gore in it, a little bit of gore. But other than that, it's pretty much slasher comedy. Definitely 80s. I mean, you throw Leif Garrett in there. You throw in one of the Playboy Playmates in there, and you throw in, Betsy Russell as, we don't, as far as we know, she's supposed to be the main interest. She's the girl. They're going to cheerleader camp. Listen to Dick. Yeah, you say Dickney in there too as the mascot. She's and it's very from the very get go. It's it's going to be like almost not on the level of funny as like Porky's, but it's more like a made for TV Porky's, I would say, in a sense. As far as there's depraved two guys, Leif Garrett plays her boyfriend. Like I said, he's driving the van, taking him to camp. It's cheerleading camp. They're gonna have there's competitions, and it just seems like, wow, this is like almost like a meatballs kind of like except for like cheerleaders. This is the kind of camp that Friday the 13th would pretty much be like this would be one of the sequels. This is what Jason would go and just kill all of them, because every one of them is pretty much, oh my gosh, just kill all of them, please. The acting isn't as bad, but the script is very low budget. But I agree with you. I agree with you though. I do love as far as the red herrings, who they want you to think is the killer in this, because they give you multiple different people. But it's basically a screwball comedy, some topless nudity, hijinks. You even got the sheriff who's banging the camp leader. And then he's also spying on the girls, sunbathing, topless stuff. And then you got the guy who basically looks like he's the creepy old man. He's the groundskeeper, Bill Murray type.
Except for he's the guy that shows up in some Carpenter flicks, typically as a bum.
Yeah. So it was interesting to see him in there, but I gotta agree with you though. You kind of don't like the main actress. You don't like Betsy Russell because she comes off as a prude. Her boyfriend she's jealous because her boyfriend's go talking to other girls at the camp, and she's like you're supposed to be here with me, but he said, like, every time I try to talk to you, you never want to do anything with me. You pretty much brush me off because you're not feeling good. So he basically tells her, well, talk to me when you're feeling good. Otherwise, shut up. You're pretty much. Because she is upset that he's straying away, and he's even pointing out to her friend, Pamela. It's like, hey, you better get a leash on your man because, and this whole behavior, it makes you hate the main character from the very beginning of this movie. So, but I'll go real quick over the whole premise of this movie is basically that they're at cheerleader camp. Someone's going around killing cheerleaders. The main girl is having nightmares. We're led to believe it's her, but is it really her?
It's got a combination of things too. So it does have the slasher thing. It almost have the hijinks thing.
Yeah.
The kills are pretty graphic, if not quick. And there's a lot of nudity in here,
which
is completely fine. I actually thought what this movie did well was actually kind of juggle between all of those things here to get you to watch it for 9 minutes. Because Leif Garrett on his own, he had a few cover hits in the 70s, was a teen idol. I mean, he's no Sean Cassidy, but that's not saying much to me. And he's definitely feeling his oats in this film because he knows he's the top dog going to this cheerleader camp. And
Honestly, though, looking at him, I had no idea that was actually Leif Garrett.
yeah,
He just looks like a regular perverted bum. He looks like a guy that basically just get killed at camp.
and he's not quite at the level of dude bro,
No,
like you would
he's
have in
average.
80s films, and
He's
he's
not.
not.
He's not
But
jacked.
he's the main guy in here, so his attitude is, hey, you don't want to hang out and have fun, you don't want to go party, you don't want to do nothing, you don't even want to talk, so the heck with it, I'm going to go talk to other people. And so you kind of understand it, and that's tough because you kind of understand where he's come from. And I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong, and I'm not
No.
knocking on women here too about the sexual aspect. It was only half joking because part of the whole idea of young women was well, what do they have to do to control their men? And of course, the answer is, it's their access to sex. And then here, Betsy Russell, she's playing Allison, the main character. I agree with you; it's hard to like her, but what I do like here is at the beginning of the film, they try to get you to understand where she's coming from because we start off already with something happening and some
Nightmare,
weird,
yeah.
trippy, psychedelic dream she's having, and then we realize, okay, she's having issues. We're not quite sure why at this point. So it's not like we hate her immediately. We understand where she's coming from. And she just has some typical teenage turmoil. Now, she's not acting like, oh, I'm the head cheerleader. I can have any man I want. So therefore I don't need you. She's acting like she's totally hooked into the guy. And so some people might not like that part of it too. But you get your support cast with her and her girls that are there. Something's obviously going on with Wikipedia and all that too, because you have Terry Weigel in here. She's Pam, one of her friends, and she was a playmate. She ended up doing adult movies. You've got, was it Rebecca Ferrati was in here too? We've talked about her in a recent Sword and Sandals movie. So you've got a good looking cast. It's if it's free on YouTube, I believe it's on Tubi as well.
I saw it on BitChute as well. Somebody uploaded the movie.
Yeah, and then Lucinda Dickey, I think she does a great job just being the supporting cast because she's there, she's listening to Allison, and so when you start getting people dying off, you're like, oh, okay. And then there's something really strange there too, and with the side characters that they introduce them where you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. I hope they die too, and many of them do, but you get the cop, and you also get the main lady that's the kind of, I'm gonna say, the boss of the
Lori
place running
Griffin, I
it,
think.
Miss Timpton. And so it turns out they're a couple in here, and they have a weird kind of pseudo sexual scene or whatever, which I could care less for, but it's that sexual hygiene she talked about. But for some reason, I go, my God, Twin Peaks is only like a year or two away from debuting, and these two look like the stand-ins for a couple people there in Twin Peaks, and it's like weird just how much they look like him so much. So I had to like Google and go, that's not her at a younger age, is it, or him? It's like no, but Twin Peaks fans who know that will know who I'm talking about. But you know what? Just when we get sick and tired of somebody dies. So this movie does a good job of kind of pacing between the kills and everything because it's only 90 minutes, and once they get to the camp, it moves on, and it's not a bad setting. But there was just something disturbing about watching the big guy, as it were, screwing around with Timmy and mooning everybody and then jumping in the water and all that. That's always uncomfortable to me because in the 80s you definitely made fun of calorically challenged individuals, at least in films like this, even if it's nice.
Is the actor. I'm not sure.
I just. Then they even do the really bad white guy rapping sort of thing on there, and I'm like, that was painful, very very painful.
So I'm trying to remember who that guy is. He's from Roadhouse.
Yeah.
So that's the only movie. Otherwise, he's been in Quite Cool, Twice Dead, A Man Called Sarge. He hasn't really been in that many good movies. But yeah, he always plays the big fat guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's not something you.
Oh, I guess he's in Batman Returns as well.
Yeah, it's just
National Quincy Louder. Okay, now I recognize more of him. Okay, but yeah, it was disgusting. We get to see him actually cross-dressing and pretending, and he's filming the girls. Girls they're up on this the rocks by the lake there, just sunbathing. You got Terry, aka Pam, basically watching the other girl hop blonde that basically that was that Leif Garrett's character was flirting with in the very beginning, and they're like just talking about her. She's like, "Well, she's gonna be the queen cap," and and Terry's more like, "No, I'm gonna be." So when the blonde girl takes you sunbathing topless, Terry takes off her top too. So
Yep.
I'm thinking like, where's
Cat fight.
I know. I'm like, yeah, like I have a topless cat fight. No, because when the other girl puts her top back on, Terry puts it on, and then we see Travis McKenna's character, the big fat guy, coming out. It makes a noise. You're like, oh, somebody's over there, and he's dressed up as an older lady in the dress. He's got the bra and everything, and the girls recognize immediately that it's not a woman just watching. He had a video camera, everything, and he videotaped them all sunbathing. And they don't really think to go after the camera at all and steal it, because it shows up later with Leif Garrett. He's showing the movie to Leif Garrett, and he's like, "Oh, look at bro." Yeah, and Leif Garrett's like, "I can't watch this. My girlfriend, and so I'm like, it's like, I'm like thinking, really, dude, you must be really loyal to her if she, and you're flirting with other women, obviously, but yeah, it's like Travis McKenna's character is like, why is this guy in there? And it's like, he's just there to be the dumpy fat guy. And I can see why this movie just didn't really do so well. Why it was kind of a flop, and that's why you can't really find it anywhere unless you actually order it on Amazon. I think. As far as streaming services, nobody really has it.
Yeah, at least not now. I mean, Betsy Russell, who's the main girl, Allison.
So,
I think she was in some of the Saw movies, and you're talking about a situation here where you've got a guy like this, and you go, well, wait a minute, could he possibly be the killer? Because he's being friendly, he's not being overbearing with the ladies and all that too. So is it a distraction? And this movie does that well, where it does bounce around from person to person that you think could be it. So his comedy thing, as dorky it is in the 80s as it is, it's actually effective as being like a red flag in here. Like, well, maybe not. You know what I mean?
So John Quinn, the writer and the producer of this movie, this was his first directing debut of this. He went on to do a lot of more softcore things, TV shows like Sin City Diaries and Forbidden Science. And the other one, the biggest one I remember every people hearing about, was Passion Cove. One for one season. Yeah. So sadly the guy passed away back in 2011. But so basically this was his big first break in everything was basically this thing, Cheerleader Camp. He had done some other movies after that, but he did a lot of softcore stuff. And you're like, what? Softcore? I thought this was a horror movie. Well, there's a softcore director. They got to start somewhere. This movie was very, dare I say it, campy. Not trying to be punny about it, but still. The kills, the first one was off screen. The camp concert, basically, like the girl threw the girl that basically who had her wrist slashed. Looks like she committed suicide. Threw in the freezer. In the kitchen room, and then the girl finds her in there, opens up and screams, and then like the sheriff's like, "Why'd you throw in the freezer?" Why? She's like, I wasn't gonna tell you because I wanted to get this until after the summer camp's over." I'm thinking this is really really weird. I'm like, I'm also getting Sweepaway Camp vibes too. I was like, no. Overall, very low budget. Some topless nudity in here, Tom. For the women, Leif Garrett packs his his tidy whities with a what do you call it, a towel.
Mm-hmm.
He even gets made fun of him. The guy is calling. He's like, you shouldn't do that. It's like it's false advertising for guys with teeny weenies. It's just overall, watch it once. It's not a movie you have to watch every year. It's not like those. But I would say this. So it's a movie you should at least see once. Unfortunately, and I say that about a lot of movies that they get overlooked because either it's Friday the 13th or it's Halloween. That's all we ever hear about when it comes to Halloween,
right?
And it's a shame because those movies should have stopped a long time ago.
Well, I mean, the thing about Cheerleader Camp is it's one in a long line of these 80s films that has a lot of these 80s type things to it. So in the 80s, we've talked about how they branched off into, really going back to the 70s. You could even call the Dirty Harry series a vigilante movie if you want. Or same thing with the Death Wishes, which had a lot of sequels. We've recently talked about the best year, hands down, of werewolf movies, 1981, where you have Wolf and the Howling and American Werewolf in London, and we've reviewed all three here on the Xtreme Movie Show. Fantastic year, and they all happen to be very good, excellent movies that have, great casts, and one of them's even kind of funny. But they're all a little bit different, even though they have wolves in them and what they're trying to say. This is a movie that you go, yeah, okay, what's different about it? What's special about it than Friday the 13th? Well, Friday the 13th is just one note. It really is. It's got a sense of dread to it, and then it turns into just buffoonery with Jason Goes to Manhattan and all sorts of silly stuff. But audiences gotten conditioned by that point in the 80s to go, okay, I really do want to be scared. But the more audiences went to slasher films and all that, the more they saw slasher films, the less scary those things became. So that's why when the original Nightmare on Elm Street came out, you're like, hey, this is a little different. It's a little trippy, and it's got your dreams. It's a slasher, but it's done in a slightly different setting. So it's a variation on the theme, and it works. And there's some interesting concepts that go into it in terms of sexuality, which we won't get into right now. But here in this film, as goofy as it is, there is an element of sexuality into it, and not just the women that are having these little I don't even want to call it a side plot, but it's the behavior of women. Well, if you don't have control of your man, well, I'm going to go after him because he's the main guy, and I don't want number 2 or number 3. Here's my chance. I'm going to go get it. And so it's not like the women are catfighting necessarily. It's just kind of like, men and women 101. So when they take their clothes off, it's not like today where you don't really see that in a film. It's just a matter of fact, yeah, let's just get undressed and let's lay out here and all that. In its typical behavior. So I think they nailed it right, rather than, oh, let's just show a little TNA here, like you would in, say, the middle of the Friday the 13th sequels or Halloween sequels too, just for whatever reasons. So here it works, but also starting off with this dream kind of Nightmare on Elm Street thing that she's going through. You're going, well, wait a minute, is there a thing about meds? Because I got to tell you this. I'm going to be straight with you here. You weren't around in the 80s like I was. So if you go down any high school, some middle schools, junior highs, as they were called back then, if you listen really close to like the women's bathrooms, you weren't hearing toilets flushing. You're hearing a lot of gagging and throwing up and stuff, because especially if cheerleaders are involved. And I'm half joking here, but the point is the lengths that people will go to excel or be number one, no matter what sport or venue it is pretty interesting. And they almost go there in this film, as far as that's why they're going to cheerleader camp, to be the best. And obviously the emphasis is not on cheerleading. That's where movies like Bring It On excel. But it does work in here.
And that's what, I didn't really hate the main character, but I could tell she was stressing out because she wanted to be perfect.
Yeah.
You wanted to do it. And then it was eating later. She's having nightmares. So that really played into, as far as people are thinking, like, she having a mental, she's breaking down. Is she killing all the competition? Is she mad because her boyfriend is like, flirting with other girls? Is she just kind of snapping? As I said, like, obviously someone's dying at the camp, and someone has a vendetta against somebody. And that's always been the key thing. It's not just a random slasher thing.
Right.
We have the old man, we have the sheriff, you have the old guy, the groundskeeper. It's like, everybody thinks the groundskeeper is creepy. The sheriff, well, we don't really trust him because he's banging the camp counselor, or is it the camp counselor because she's a former beauty queen? Maybe she's killing them. There's so many different people that could be the killer. Listen to Dickie, being the mascot. Is she jealous because she gets made fun of because she's not a cheerleader? There's so many different people that could be the killer. We kind of find out, though, it's like, you know what? I kind of did see it coming, sadly, with me, I did, personally. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you, Rob, but
after the mascot battle, I knew. I was like, oh, it's right there staring right at me.
But even before that, though, I was just like, I knew kind of, at a sense, is like, you're going to go with this, because I don't think they'd really go with what they want us to believe. So, I was pleasantly surprised. But overall, this is not even really a B movie. It's more like a C movie, though. In the sense, they could have had someone else other than Leif Garrett be more believable. The fact that they went with Leif Garrett, it felt like they just were comfortable going with what's this guy from 21 Jump Street? Not Johnny Depp, the other one.
Oh, that dude, yeah.
I forgot his.
Not the Asian, the guy with the earring.
Leif Garrett looked like a crappy version of a Richard Grieco. I'm sorry. Richard Grieco would have been a better choice.
Okay.
Because I know you're like, Richard Grieco in a horror movie with girls like in Cheerleaders. I'm in. It's like it's like.
I thought he looked like a fatter Vince Neil, but
Oh,
from
oh,
Motley
well,
Crue.
like I said, this guy was supposed to be a heartthrob in the 80s,
70s. Teen
70s.
Heartthrob.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
he'd been around, and he had banged all the 70s female teen stars like Christy McNichol, Tatum O'Neal, Jason Bateman's sister, actually, Justine, too. I mean, so he was a name in the 70s for all these hits. And so when you become an adult, what do? You transition into film. And the one thing the 80s did have that was a little bit different is instead of actors on the big screen, eventually the older Hollywood actors, like definitely getting into the 70s, starting to show up on top tier TV shows like The Love Boat or something, Fantasy Island, let's say. You would start having them guest starring like in TJ Hooker and other 80s shows, and again, we're talking 23, 24 episodes a season, not these 8 to 10 things that we get today. So you've got somebody who's young enough to do that, that people know them, and then you're trying to get this crossover while cable is starting to reach critical mass. And it sounds funny saying that now because now people are cord cutting and streaming services are having their battles. But the reach of having names of people from other areas like models and putting them in movies, I mean, one, there is some name recognition to it. So when say Terry Weigel's in here, you're like, okay, I know her. How many eyes is that going to bring in? I don't know, but you definitely had that in here. It wasn't just somebody that was pretty and happened to have some acting talent. It might have been somebody
Yeah.
that wasn't that great of an actress, but was good looking enough or had a screen presence or was willing to show the goods. Let's say. I mean, that was definitely a topic people kind of discussed a little bit in the end. It's like, well, this movie sucks because you're getting all these people that aren't really actors or actresses. You throw them together in a really low rate kind of thing, so it's going to suck. And I still think this movie's done decently for what it is.
I want to also point out this is also distributed by Anchor Bay, who's done a lot of different movies over the years, especially the newer stuff. We've had like Children of the Corn reboots. Trying, but they went defunct back in 2017 though. But they were basically was done by Stars Entertainment. So you're gonna get Anchor Bay. You didn't know if you're gonna get low budget, if you're gonna get actual good stuff, but you knew. But at least with Anchor Bay movies, that you're in for a treat. That's all I knew, and that's no trick on my part.
Yeah, one thing I was going to ask you, because you brought up the point about her not kind of liking her at the beginning. We understand how that happens from the very first scene, but part of me goes, I wonder if they could have made more of an emphasis at the beginning of the film to almost imply that she was a virgin, because she's got a bit of a goodsy two shoes to her
Yeah,
without being, Queen Bee, Miss Sexy, all that sort of thing, which is different. So I thought that would have been kind of interesting. Oh, they're going away to summer camp. They've been together the whole year. Maybe this is the time when she's going to finally put out, or they're going to do it, or seal the deal, or however, whatever terms you want to use. The point is that might have played more into the being sexually kind of repressed and the issues that it can have on you, and not to make this movie a lot more deeper than it is, because it's not that deep of a film, but it's something where it might have, I think, translated to more people watching it from the female perspective rather than just showing her as it is, and rather than us going, oh, well, we don't care, because by now, late 80s, slasher films are on their way out. I mean, they're really not as popular as they were even 5 years
no,
earlier.
action movies had taken over everything.
Absolutely.
You had your suspense horror kind of movies, like from the 60s going to the late 80s, and then like I said, it kind of fizzled out. Drama became a big thing, same with action movies. But then action movies were replaced by a lot of drama stuff. There was still a few, but not like they were in the 80s. Then came the action. Drama, 90s was all drama, suspense, thrillers. And
then in the 90s, you've got serial killers romanticized and bad guys being romanticized and vampires being romanticized. And you took all the scare out of what little existed and was left in the 80s, I think, for the most part.
And then since then, the 2000s going on until today, it's pretty much been like independent horror movies.
Yeah.
Which can be good and which can be bad, because I mean, people put those on because, wow, these are all really bad or really low budget. Well, that's the 70s and the 60s, man.
Yeah.
That's what it was. You get a few hits, so also like American Werewolf in London. The reason it did so well being an indie film is the fact that it actually had a great transformation sequence. Other than that, If they didn't have that in there, I don't think people would talk about it today. Think about it.
I would disagree on that, but it's it was notable for the time. So at the time, it definitely was like it. But you could argue the same thing for Star Wars, because Star Wars is a very basic movie, very simple actually.
True.
But the way it's presented on the screen at that time was a big deal, and that was unlike most of what people had saw before. So much so that it
And that's what I
influenced.
mean. That you having that sequence for American Werewolf in London, having that sequence where he turns to the werewolf, you took that out of there. I don't, like I said, I don't think it'd be as popular today if you didn't have that sequence there. Because back then, that was a huge thing.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Star Wars. They try to do Star Wars movies today. They just don't compare it to what they originally did. Those first three movies are always going to be the best because the time they came out and the fact they put the effort into it to make it great. Now they're just kind of phoning it in. Now, like I said, I love props. So I love the Lugosi original, werewolf, movie. I think that holds up today still. Now I've never seen the one with Benicio del Toro. I've never seen that.
It's a good one.
So
Very good.
I might put that on my list for stuff to watch this month.
Right.
But like I said, I prefer props over green screen. I do not want green screen movies. That's my problem with this. So when they come up low budget, to me, I'm kind of excited because it's gonna be a stupid plot. Sure, that's the point of horror movies, slasher movies. There are always gonna be stupid things in there. But I like it when they actually make it where you actually they outsmart you. They make you think it's gonna be this person, and it turns out the person you really didn't think it was gonna be. Because that's what I liked about Scream. Scream was great. Scream made you think, they're telling you all the different tropes, all the different movies. I love it. Wes Craven. If you haven't seen that, guys, watch Scream as well. But yeah, because slasher movies are a dime a dozen, but this movie may not hold up as much as the other ones, but I think it still has a following. Not as big as the others, but I would still recommend watching this movie.
Yeah, it's like I agree with you. It's at least worth a watch, especially if you're like that sort of thing. It's a movie that most people just don't seem to recall or remember, and you go, "Oh, well, which one?" Because you had a lot of you had some Canadian films, but you had some sexcapades, hijinks, coming of age type films that were just very lowbrow like this, but just more on the TNA and the goofy hijinks that teenage guys go to try to get laid.
This is the thing. There wasn't really any sex in this movie just for one scene, but you had the women in that bra and underwear. You went around topless bikinis. For that alone, that's better than most of the slasher movies I've seen.
Let's just say at the end of the movie, I thought it was pretty interesting in that what happens, and it kind of almost reminds you of the ending of Halloween, or Halloween 2, I should say, in the morning, where Jamie Lee Curtis is being carted off there, and I'm not even saying who did it, because that's part of the fun of watching, is you can kind of guess and everything, but when you look at it, you're like, okay, they set it up for a sequel that makes sense. It's not completely stupid, and there's definitely a psychological component to it that I think the way the movie started and the way it ended, that they could have emphasized even more with a more of a sexual thing to it. It would have been a more interesting watch, going, well, how do you deal with sexual situations? And the horror part is just the repercussions of those decisions. And it sounds kind of, I'm not trying to be too nerdy about it, but I liked how it ended. And once we saw it, I thought it was pretty good. And if you watch it all the way to the end, you're gonna just laugh in and go, "Oh yeah, okay, whatever." But yeah, it's not bad, and it's a little bit different, which is why it's worth watching. And I'll close with this, and then hand it over to you for any other final thoughts. But I recently watched a very lush-looking movie that trailer-wise kind of go, "Oh, this looks like a retelling of Dracula." So it's interesting to see what versions are out there, what people do. I mean, there's the Jack Palance version, very good. There's the Frank Langella one from the late 70s, very good. There's one on Netflix for a couple episodes a couple years ago, very good. This one called The Invitation, I watched, and it's horrible, and it looks great. There's very attractive people in it. The sets are fantastic, but it captures absolutely zero feeling of anything. At least here in this movie, even though it's got a moderate sense score to it, you still kind of feel like you're at the camp and you understand what's going on. So it's successful in kind of transporting you there. So I would still rather watch something like this if we're out today than something like The Invitation, which is just pure crap. Not even scary at all. It's just, even by my taste, which can be a little bit eclectic, I find The Invitation pretentious. You know what you're getting with Sleepaway Camp.
Yep.
Any other final thoughts from you before we call it a night?
Final thoughts. Check out the film. The worst that could happen is that you put on a movie and it bores you. I mean, but I don't think so. I think there's still somewhat entertainment in it. Going into the fact it's going to be a very low budget. It's not going to be the best, but it's definitely far not the worst movie you've ever seen. Like I said, I don't want to promote. I don't want to promote it, but I also don't want to make you think like, oh wow, if he really didn't like it as much, I shouldn't watch it. No, everybody's different, Yeah, I mean, you got Leif Garrett in there, bro. You get people getting shot. You get people getting stabbed. There's
a good poster too. Back when posters were fun.
I know. It reminds you of Evil Dead too, doesn't it? The skeleton on the cover. The kills in here cool. There's head tremors going through the back of the head. People getting stabbed. I don't want to give away much more than that, but I'll just say this: there's no agenda in it. But other than that, all they want you to know is that somebody is killing somebody, and it's totally awesome.
You would not have cheerleader films be as popular as they are today if it wasn't for all these kind of stuff. Because if you think about it, you've got the chick from Death Proof, you've got was it Dale and Tucker versus Evil, Cheerleaders Must Die. What's the other one here? I mentioned Bring It On earlier. Jennifer's Body. I mean, think about it. That's where they've taken the cheerleader thing and really amped it up. That wouldn't be possible if there wasn't so much attention, at least no matter how it was presented in these kind of 80s movies. I think if you didn't do that. So, there is a thing to that. So, yeah, Cheerleader Camp 1988. Check it out. We're of course not talking about the one from 2010. Was it #1 Cheerleader Camp that the cheerleaders were replaced by strippers? It's good. They're good looking, but it's not as fun as this one.
No, definitely not.
All right, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good night. Take care. Thanks for listening to us and letting everybody else know that the Extreme Movie Show exists. We are going through Slasher Sundays, and we'll have another slasher film next Sunday to talk about here for the month of October. We'll take any suggestions that you have. So on Tuesday night, we'll be dropping another movie as well. Stay tuned to see what that is. For RDV and everybody involved here at the Extreme Movie Show, have a good night. And as always, stay extreme.
Later.
Give me a KI.